Today we will be talking about stress. So here are some symptoms that you might be experiencing that is a sign that you could be under stress. Do you find yourself constantly tired, tense, dizzy, headachy, overwhelmed, hormonal, weak, anxious, depressed, in pain, digestive issues, acne, you can't sleep, your mind never stops, your to-do list is never ending, and you're constantly exhausted? So these are just some of the symptoms of stress. And if you answered yes to even just a few of them, then it could be that stress is a problem for you. Now, as you know, I love to find our baseline before we get started on making change. So I'm going to get you to stop now and download the DAS 21, which is a survey to monitor depression, anxiety, and stress levels. So this is a survey that you would be given by your doctor or your psychologist before they started either medication or treatment with you, just to see where you're at and to see what is a primary problem, because those three conditions have a lot of symptoms that overlap. So it's a really useful tool, and I really recommend that you do this, get your baseline, and it's always good to come back to these baseline tests in 3 months or 6 months and do them again, and then you can see how much improvement you've made. There's a second page to it which has got the results on, and you can see down there at the bottom if you're getting results around that severe or extremely severe range, then you really should be making an appointment to see your doctor and chatting about that. So we all hear the word stress, we're all constantly saying we're stressed, but what actually is it? Stress is actually a natural body response to challenges that we may face. And stress is actually a good thing. So you've probably heard of the saber-toothed tiger analogy. If we're getting attacked, our body goes into our stress state, and that enables us to fight or flight. So we can either fight and win the war, or we can run away and save ourselves. So either way, it's a survival tactic, and it's really essential for our lives. The problem that we're facing today is that we're not getting into those acute stress states. Occasionally, we're living in a chronic low-level stress state. And when we're stressed, the body activates the sympathetic nervous system. I call this the red zone. This is where we get those fight and flight hormones being released, like cortisol and adrenaline. It increases our body's metabolism, our temperature, our blood pressure, our respiratory rate, our heart rate, and our muscle tension to allow us to fight or flight. So, like I say, it's allowing us to survive. But when we're in that sympathetic or that red zone, we can't be in our parasympathetic state, which I call our green zone. And it's in this parasympathetic state where we should be living the majority of our life. This is where digestion happens, rest and repair happens, where all the good stuff happens. So it's really important to know that a little bit of stress is actually good for us, and acute stress is completely normal. The problem that we face is that we're in a chronic stress state, so low level stress that's constantly happening to our body. So we're constantly turning on these stress hormones rather than turning them on occasionally and then moving back into our green zone. So there's multiple studies that show prolonged stress is just bad for our health in general. Any illness that you're predisposed to is more likely to happen if you're in a stress state. So there's just a reminder, the traffic lights, we've got our red zone and our green zone. And what we really want to do is to be able to fully relax and go back and let our body have its normal functions of resting, repairing, and digesting, living in the green zone, and occasionally moving into the red zone, and then quickly having the ability to move back into that green zone again. So research shows that stress is a trigger for migraine attacks in 70% of people. So most of you listening to this is going to be relevant for you. And the thing with stress is it's not only a trigger for migraine, but these hormones that are constantly being are constantly being produced in our body, they also cause the brain to become more and more and more sensitive. So they're lowering our threshold to migraine. And this is what we really need to be working on, is increasing that threshold to migraine. So stress is not only a trigger, but it's also affecting our threshold. So really, really important that we're dealing with it as soon as possible. So there's two types of stresses, internal stresses and external stresses. So we all know about our external stresses, the environment. So we're caught up in a traffic jam or someone's yelling at us, psychological, those emotional stresses. But there's also internal stresses. So hormonal changes, illnesses, pain, poor sleep, all those sorts of things develop this stress response as well. So to start with learning how to deal with our stress, we need to recognize what is actually causing our stress. And it's really important to make sure that the goal here is not to live a stress-free life, because that is just impossible. There is always things that are going to go wrong. Things are going to break. People are going to let you down. Things will go wrong. But it's how we respond, interpret, and deal with those stresses. That's what matters. So our lives are so busy. We need to learn to pause and to slow down and not live in this constant on of the world we live in, which is, our emails are beeping, our phone's beeping, the fridge is beeping, everything's beeping at us all the time. The kids are yelling, like it's just on. We need to get out of that on world and take some time to just move back into that green zone. And the more we spend in the green zone, the easier it is for our body to move back into it. So to start off with, I'd like you to download this PDF and make a list of all the challenges and stresses that you face and separate them into the internal stresses and then the external stresses. And with the external stresses, I want you to split them up into those three columns. So things that you can easily change, things that you can accept, you can reframe how you think about it, and things that are just not acceptable and you need to remove from your life. The reality is that a lot of the external stresses that we face, like our work demands, our busy family life, our financial concerns, they can't be changed or they can't be left. So they'll be in that middle column. We need to learn how to accept and how to manage these pressures without eliciting that stress response. We need to choose how we interpret and respond to those challenges, and that'll make all the difference. And I love this quote from Dr. Libby Weaver. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. So over this lecture, I've got a whole different a whole list of strategies, I suppose, and they're not all going to be for you. So I'm just going to run through them, and whatever resonates with you, try to do those strategies first. And then maybe in a few months, redo your DAS 21 and see if you're making improvement. If your scores aren't different, come back to this lecture, watch it again, and maybe try some of the other strategies. So you don't have to put all of these strategies in place. Just see what resonates with you the most, start off with that, and then take it from there. So the first one is for those of us that have a very busy mind. And I use the analogy of a computer. And if you've got all your tabs open on the top of your computer there's like 20 tabs open, it's pretty common that that computer is going to start to slow down or maybe even freeze. And that is kind of like our brain. If we've got so many thoughts going through our mind, we can't really focus and do one thing properly. So what we need to do is to get all those thoughts out, get them all ordered, and then just focus on one thing at a time. So I love to do the brain dump. So if you're feeling like your mind is just out of control, download the to-do list and do your brain dump and put them all, rather than just listing it all down on a piece of paper, try to put them in these boxes. So some of the things in your mind will be super urgent and you need to get them done right now. Other things are just things that you want to get to one day or maybe next week. And so just put them all in the boxes that are appropriate and maybe even schedule them into your diary and just get everything out of your brain. And then once you've done that, you can start from the top of the list with your urgents and then just slowly and carefully work through the things that are really important. So the important thing to realize is the solution is not to do a to-do list, because a to-do list isn't that much better than having all those tabs open in your brain, because it creates stress. You look at your list and you're, oh my goodness, how can I get through all of these things today? So what I like to do is, as I said, do your brain dump, get it all down on paper, and then schedule it into your diary. If there's anything that can be delegated, delegate. I love to delegate. If there's anything that actually doesn't really need to be done, just cross it off the list. And everything else, just put it into a priority. So the things that must be done today can be on today's list. But the other things, something might need to be done on Thursday or on the weekend or next week or next month, put it all in your diary so it's out of your head. You're not worried you're going to forget about it, but it's not all on your list that you're looking at today thinking, I am never going to get to the end of that list, which is stressful in itself. So this one's great for those people that have a super busy mind. Positive thinking is really good for all of us. So we all have that little voice in our head, the chatter in our brain. Now, every time you experience a negative thought, I want you to try to recognize it and replace it with a positive thought. And this is very hard because that little voice in our brain, it tends to like to do the negative. Why are you thinking you can do that? You can't do that. But every time you catch it, and that in itself is hard. Sometimes we're not really even realizing that these thoughts are constantly happening inside our mind. But when they do, and when you're aware that you're having negative thoughts, I just want you to say to your brain, thank you, thanks for giving me that thought, but I'm not that interested in that at the moment. I'm going to change that thought with the opposite, so a positive thought. So it sounds really silly, like you're talking to yourself, but if we can politely say no to the negative thoughts, replace them with a positive thought, over time, we will start to be thinking more positively and less of those negative thoughts will pop up. We choose where we put our focus. We can choose to turn down the volume on those negative thoughts and to create new positive thoughts that are going to be much better for us and for our health. So positive thinking is just something that you need to be aware of, and it's really about the thoughts that are in your head. So you can do this anytime, anywhere, and it's really about just catching those negative thoughts, replacing them with positive ones, and that becoming the more natural way that your brain is talking to you. Sleep, we'll talk about this. We've got a lecture on sleep. It's one of our seeds of success, but a good night's rest is essential. And if we're not well rested, then anything that's stressing us is going to just stress us more. So we'll talk more about this on the lecture in sleep, but I just thought I'd put it in here because it is so, so important. It's really important to have social connection. So if you can surround yourself with positive, trustworthy, uplifting people, it'll make a real difference. So I would really encourage you at least once a week, but as much as you can, to have meaningful, positive social connections. This might be with friends, family, loved ones, children. It might even be with your dog, taking your dog for a walk down to the beach. It's a positive interaction, that feeling of being supported and loved. It really helps just to get all those juicy, happy hormones flowing through our body and turning off those stress hormones. Self-care is really important, and a lot of us put ourselves last. We have got migraine and we spend a lot of time suffering with our migraine attacks. And so when we're feeling good, we try to be on and we try to make up for all the lost time. And in that time, we often put ourselves as a last priority. But that is only making the next attack more likely to happen. So I just can't emphasize enough how important it is for you to prioritize looking after yourself every day. If you're not looking after yourself, no one else is going to do it. So what I recommend, and again, there's a download for you, is to make your happy list. So I have got my happy list, and here are some of the ideas that I've got on my list. So in the morning, I like to get up every morning early and watch the sunrise, have a cup of tea on the deck, sit out in my garden or watch the trees, taking a walk on the beach, having a bath, lighting some candles, watching a comedy show, anything that makes you feel happy, those uplifting connections with friends. And this is a very personal list. Everyone's very different, and you know what really gets you feeling joyful and bubbly on the inside. So write everything you can think of on that list and keep adding to it. When you have an experience that you think, oh, I feel so good and uplifted, add it onto your happy list. And then every day, check in with your happy list and try to make sure you have done at least one thing off your happy list, one thing for you every single day, whether it's a good day or a bad day. Whether you're having a migraine attack or whether you're, busy at work, living your normal life. It's really, really important not to let this go. So it's something that you should be doing every single day. Again, breath work, we do have a whole lecture on this. It's another one of our seeds to success. But breathing is the one thing we can do to put ourselves from the red zone to the green zone. So anytime you're slowing your breath down, and particularly if your exhalation is longer than your inhalation, this will put us into that parasympathetic or that green zone. So a simple exercise that you can do is just to breathe in for a count of 4 and breathe out for a count of 6. So what that's doing is giving you a slightly longer expiration, and it's slowing your breath rate down to 6 breaths per minute. And we'll learn a lot more about breathing in the breath section, but if you can just work on that one exercise until we get to that point. And you can do that anytime you're feeling yourself getting a little bit overwhelmed. I like to recommend that you might even do this every hour or set an alarm on your phone or on your computer to do this regularly throughout the day. But definitely if you're feeling, you might be stuck in traffic and you feel yourself getting a little bit uptight, that is when you can do this breath exercise. And it's something that's just within you. You don't need any tools. So again, you can do it anytime, anywhere. This is one that I have struggled with over my life, learning to say no. Now, when we're having a migraine attack and it's a bad one and we're in bed, obviously we have to, it's a no, we're out. But on those other days, as we touched on before, we're often feel so bad that we're always saying, oh, I've got a headache or I'm having an attack, that on those other days, we're often trying to make up for it. Yes, we'll do this. Yes, we'll do that. But it's a bit of a trap, and we can get into this people-pleasing state, and it's hard when we're like that to say no, and it's hard to look after ourselves when we're overwhelming ourselves and being so busy because we're saying yes to everything even though we don't really want to do it. So we need to learn to say no, and we should say no every time we're asked to do something that we actually really don't want to do. So not every time. Sometimes you have to do things, particularly at work or with your family, but it might be helping out with a fundraiser at school, for example, for your children's school. You don't have time to do it. You're busy working. You've already got too much on your plate, and you feel like you should say yes, but really deep inside you're thinking, I don't really want to do it. That's when we need to practice saying no. And the more you say no, the easier it will get to do it. Trust me, I've done it. I used to be such a people pleaser, and it's something that I'm constantly working on, but I'm getting much better at it. So again, we've got a download, and I want you just to reflect on who or what you have trouble saying no to, and then just trying to break down why that is and trying to get to the bottom of that. A gratitude journal is a great idea. I have a little journal like this that sits by my bed, and every night before I go to bed, I try to jot just 1 or 2 things down from the day that I'm grateful for. And often at our dinner table at night, we'll go around the table and everyone will just say one thing that we're grateful for from the day. And it's a lovely way just to shift the mindset and really relax the body, particularly in the evening before it's time to go to bed. And there's an interesting study there that showed one small stressful event takes 90 minutes to clear from our body. So even a small stress, those hormones, then they take 90 minutes to clear. So you imagine another hour and a half if you have another stressful event and another stressful event. So all these strategies that we're putting in place is just trying to reduce those stressful events so they're happening less often, and that time we're clearing them so much quicker because we've got the strategies to move back into our green zone or activating our parasympathetic nervous system. Meditation is proven. There's so much research out now around meditation and mindfulness. And a lot of people just think their mind's too busy, I can't do it. But really, honestly, everyone can meditate. There's so many options. Even if you start with just sitting down for 5 minutes and just focusing on your breath, just breathing in, focusing on the senses, focusing on what you can smell, what you can hear, what you can taste. A few minutes pass, and before you know it, that stress state has really reduced. So it's something that I really recommend everyone tries to get into. It's free and it's absolutely proven. It's effective at lowering stress. And I've put down a number of options for you there. Like I say, the easiest ones I find for people that have trouble quieting their mind is the first two. So focusing on the breathing and then focusing on the senses. You can do a muscle contraction, contract and relaxing all your muscles. You might do a visualization. Or the other thing that can be really helpful for a lot of people is just to download a meditation app and listen to a guided meditation. And of course, there's meditation classes popping up everywhere. There's online meditation classes learning how to meditate. And you can take this, to the point where you're doing it twice a day for 20 minutes, or you can just start with your 5 minutes. So anything is better than nothing. So I really recommend that you look into meditation practice if you're not already doing it. Brain breaks are really important. So especially on your work days, and like we've said already, we're busy. If every hour you could set a little timer on your phone, ding, and when you hear that little ding, you just take 5 minutes or even 30 seconds and just turn your brain off from whatever you're doing. Take your gaze away from the computer, look out of the window if you've got a window accessible to you, particularly if there's greenery outside. You might see some birds, you might take a breath, you might be aware of what senses are being activated, what can you hear, what can you see. Just take a few minutes and just give your brain a break from that focus and that concentration. And like I say, especially on your work days, especially if you're working long hours. And again, it's with you, within you, it's simple, it's free, and you can do it anywhere. So a lot of these strategies for stress reduction, you can do them on the go. So it's just a matter of knowing the strategies, knowing what works for you, and actually putting them into place. A lot of people say to me, I just don't have time. And my answer is always the same. If you don't have time to do these exercises, then that means you need to be doing them. It's one of the issues that's causing the sensitization of your migraine brain. If you're too busy, then you're too stressed. And that sensitization is increasing, your threshold is lowering, and it's time for you to revisit your work and life balance and revisit your priorities, because a lot of these are literally just 2 minutes. 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there. So we've all got the same amount of hours in the day. It's what we choose to do with that time that matters. And it's time that we really made lowering our stress levels a priority. So there's lots of downloads in this section, lots of forms to fill out. So make sure you download all the worksheets and choose at least 3 of these strategies and try to put them into place and really try to do them consistently, day in, day out. And maybe in 1 month, 3 months, whatever feels right for you, redo your DAS 21 and make sure they're working for you. And if they're not, re-watch this lecture and choose some of the other strategies and try those. So next up, we'll be talking more about the breath work.